Let me try to read your mind. You're thinking 100 hours is not enough time to explore Patagonia. Okay, yes, true. That is until you realize that properly exploring the region, like actually getting to see the sights, can easily cost you $500 per day or more. Time is always money when you're traveling, but in Patagonia, your time is gold, and you have to plan accordingly. My name is Josh, and I am a digital nomad who lives in a different country every single month. Join me for a brisk journey through the breathtaking yet very expensive Patagonia region and find out if I feel like my trip down to the end of the world was worth it. My journey to Patagonia began by taking a $40 direct flight from Buenos Aires down to El Calafate. El Calafate is known as the gateway to Patagonia, and 3 of my 4 nights would be spent there. Now, I don't really know what I expected, but I definitely did not expect for El Calafate to feel quite so remote, you know? As I sat in the shuttle van from the airport to the hostel, it really hit me. I'm pretty much in the middle of nowhere. So I pulled out my phone to do a little bit of research, and I learned that this part of Patagonia is in fact considered a cold desert. And to be honest, the very sparse vegetation and the openness and the rockiness was totally unlike anything I had ever experienced. It actually kind of felt like I was on Mars. Since I knew that my excursions were going to cost me hundreds of dollars per day, I decided to cheap out on the accommodations. I stayed in a shared space hostel. It was only around $20 per night, but be warned, I was roughing it out here. This definitely won't be for everyone, but if you're like me and you don't really care for luxury, a hostel like this one is a great place to save money for the rest of your trip. My goal for day 1 was simple: get settled, explore El Calafate, and eat a cheap dinner. El Calafate has sort of one main tourist strip. There is shopping, souvenirs, some really cool handmade arts and crafts, and a whole bunch of restaurants. It is pretty cute, but it's also very apparent that this city is pretty much just a hotel base for further exploration elsewhere. I decided to take a walk along the shore of Lago Argentino for several kilometers just to make sure that I got some video with the El Calafate sign. I mean, you gotta have proof. Also, a dog was there. Just feel like I should mention that. I made it back into town and grabbed a cheap dinner at a spot called Don Pancho. It's a street food restaurant a few blocks off of the main strip where I was able to buy an Argentinian burrito for 11,000 pesos, which at the time of filming was just around $10. But honestly, for $10, this was great. This thing is an absolute unit, and it can be just totally loaded up with sauces and toppings of your choosing. I made out super well on day 1. I barely spent any money at all, which was great and necessary, because that would all be changing very soon. You're not ready for this. You're not. I'm telling you. I ate my free breakfast at the hostel before heading out for one of 2 excursions out from El Calafate that I would be taking over the next 2 days. This was the El Perito Moreno Glacier Tour, and the premise of the tour was pretty simple. I would be driven from El Calafate through the desert landscape of Patagonia until arriving at the national park that contains El Perito Moreno Glacier. And I figured, if I was going to do it, I was going to do it right. And so, I booked the tour with the optional boat trip add-on that would take me right up to the glacier itself, Titanic style. All of which brought the total cost of the tour to $324 altogether. Ugh. You were not ready. I told you. Absurdly expensive, like actually absurd. And yet I paid for it. Why, you may ask? Well, because of this. If the weather had been trash, or if anything had gone wrong on this day at all, for that huge price, this would have been a bust. But at least for me, that was not the case. I was so lucky to get an absolutely gorgeous day with beautiful crisp air and loads of sunshine. I got to literally watch this huge chunk of glacier just melting off into the water, and this boat ride. Oh my, like I literally felt like I was on a National Geographic TV show. I just spit on the lens. Gotta clean that off. This was simply one of the most incredible travel days of my entire life. I booked this whole trip on a whim, and a few weeks before my flight, I didn't even know that El Perito Moreno Glacier even existed. And now it's become one of my favorite places in the entire world. I mean, just look, it is literally the wallpaper on my phone. That's El Perito Moreno Glacier. It was super expensive, but I still sort of feel like the boat ride enhanced the whole experience quite a bit. All in all, with everything included, this day alone cost me nearly $400 and that is with staying in a dirt cheap $20 hostel. But don't worry, I had that credit card on standby because on day 3, we were heading to Chile. Please look at this vehicle, it is basically a monster truck. On day 3, I took a long journey. I went all the way from El Calafate to Torres del Paine National Park in Chile. And I did it all in a vehicle designed to drive over some pretty treacherous terrain. Despite the fact that this tour would go on for about 16 hours, as compared with the 6 from the day before, this tour was actually just a little bit cheaper, only $210. Yeah, only 210. Whew. Now, I will admit that a lot of this day was spent on the bus. Getting from El Calafate to Torres del Paine is a bit of a journey. Eventually, we crossed the border from Argentina to Chile and in to Torres del Paine National Park. And my journey here was pretty wild because we would make a lot of stops throughout the park, and the first one was pretty underwhelming. At the time, it was cloudy, this particular view was very meh, and in that moment, I really thought that I had wasted $265. Not to mention, I was wondering if I had wasted a whole day in Patagonia. Like, what was I even doing here? I started internally freaking out. But it got better. Actually, it got a lot better. Every stop we made was more and more beautiful than the last. In fact, this lake was so still that the mountain behind it was perfectly reflected on its surface, which is something that our guide said pretty much never happens with how intense the wind in Patagonia can be. But no visit to Torres del Paine National Park is complete without taking a hike. And thankfully, even though we had a tightly scheduled day with only 5 or 6 brief stops throughout the park, there was one full and proper hike included in the experience. And wouldn't you know it, just in time for our hike, the clouds parted and the sun came out, and I experienced another of the most stunning views that I have ever seen in my entire life. Now, of course, a proper visit to Torres del Paine would include multiple hikes and camping over multiple days. But I mean, please, just look at me for a second. I don't own a windbreaker. I don't own hiking boots. I don't now, nor have I ever owned a tent. But to be honest, that makes me even more thankful that tours like this one exist, because they give regular people like me a chance to hike a portion of the park, even with a very basic skill level and absolutely no gear. And for the cost, here, they do at least include a little packed lunch. I ate mine sitting at a table overlooking a gorgeous lake at the end of the day. It's super cheesy to say, but I really do feel like this was a priceless experience. But even for as good as this was, I could not end my visit to Patagonia without seeing the end of the world. On day 4, I flew from El Calafate to Ushuaia, the city at the end of the world. Ushuaia is located at the southern tip of South America, and it's the place where many Antarctic cruises depart from. In Ushuaia, I stayed in another budget accommodation, although this one was a bit nicer than the one in El Calafate. This one is a capsule hotel. If you've never stayed in one, it's similar to staying in a hostel, except it's a bit more private and a bit more modern. This ran me $56 for one night, but 3 nights in a traditional hostel was my limit. This was worth it. Now, I only had a short amount of time in Ushuaia, but I knew that I was going to use it to take a small cruise of my own. Not to Antarctica, but through the Beagle Channel, with the end goal of ultimately seeing the lighthouse at the end of the world. This was the shortest excursion. From start to finish, this one took just about 3 hours. And even still, it ran me a clean $99. That said, I couldn't be mad because I really do love riding in a boat. I think in another life I was a fisherman or a pirate or a mermaid. I was also pleasantly surprised to find out that this tour included a hike as well. As I was walking around, I could not get over how different this part of the world feels. It really is so much like being on another planet. There are different animals and different vegetation, sure, but honestly, just the air feels different. It's so nice and super refreshing, and I could absolutely see myself getting addicted to this place. Shortly after reaching the lighthouse, the tour finished, and I only had a few hours left before I would have to head to bed and fly back to Buenos Aires in the morning. So I decided to wander around the town a bit, and ultimately I ended up stumbling into Doña Lupita's Pizzeria, where I would have a fantastic Argentinian-style pie. And as I ate, I reflected on the last 100 hours. In total, I personally spent just around 1,000 US dollars on this 4.5-day trip, all food and flights and accommodations included. And aside from the cost of the excursions, which of course is why you go there in the first place, I was really doing some penny pinching. For 1,000 US dollars, you can buy some pretty nice things. A couple pairs of really nice shoes, a designer purse, a new iPhone. You can even pay your rent or mortgage in a lot of places. It's a serious amount of money, but it does pose this big question, right? What is the value of an experience? It's an impossible question to answer, and everyone will feel differently. And the crazy thing is that I will say, if I was a better planner, and if I actually knew how much I was gonna end up spending in Patagonia ahead of time, I probably would not have gone in the first place. The cost would have scared me off, and I would have canceled my plans. But now that I've actually been, I can confidently say that it was worth it. It very well may be the most beautiful part of the world that I have ever seen. And I won't lie, even if I have to work countless hours in order to save up the money to go there again, I know that I will absolutely do it in a heartbeat. So what do you think? Would you go to Patagonia? Is it worth it? Is it too expensive? Let me know down in the comments below. And be sure to like and subscribe because I would love to hang out with you even more. Here's another video about Argentina that I think you're really gonna like. Click here to check it out now.